Hello everybody, I am Dr. Rucha from CEDEES and today we will be discussing a bit about periodontal flap surgery. So what is periodontal flap surgery? It's elevation of soft tissues. That's the soft tissue part which is elevated is called the flap. Okay. For example, if you can see in this picture over here, there is a pocket. Anything more than 4 mm, the normal depth of the gingival sulcus is 2 to 3 mm. So anything more than 3 mm, 4 or more is a pocket. Now to treat pocket, there are many ways. Okay, so we have two types of pocket, shallow pocket that is around 4 to 5 mm. For that, scaling, root planing, curettage is enough to manage that pocket. But when a pocket goes beyond 6 mm, that is 6 and more, 7, 8, 9, 10, it becomes a deep pocket. For that, non-surgical therapy is not enough and we need to go for something known as flap surgery. Now, as per the definition, flap is a section of the gingiva or the oral mucosa which is surgically elevated from the underlying tissues to provide visibility and accessibility to the bone and root surface. Now, the part of this definition that we should focus on is the visibility and accessibility part. Whenever we say flap surgery, we feel it is a very big surgical procedure, it does something to the tissues and helps it to heal, but no. Basically, the elevation of the flap is only to provide visibility and access. Once we open it, the thing that we are going to do is again root planing. We are going to remove the plaque, calculus, debris from the surface of the root and close the flap up. So the only purpose of doing a flap is access and visibility. Let's come to the type of flaps. So we can classify flaps as per 3 types. First is based on the bone exposure after reflection. Second is replacement of the flap after exposure. And third is the management of papilla. So let's see them one by one. So based on the exposure, as you can see here, the bone is totally elevated. The flap is completely separate and the bone is exposed. So this is a full thickness flap. The entire thickness of the soft tissue has been elevated from the bone, full thickness. Now here in this picture, if you appreciate, some of the soft tissue has been left on the surface of the bone, whereas some has been elevated. So that is why it is known as a split or a partial thickness flap. Each of them have its advantages and disadvantages as well as its indications and contraindications. So full thickness when we remove the entire soft tissue, partial thickness when we leave some soft tissue on the bone and remove some soft tissue. So these are depending on the exposure of the bone. Coming to the based on flap placement after surgery. So suppose the flap is here, you reflect it and you place it back. Now where do you place it back? It classifies it according to various types. For example, let's go on to the pictures. Yeah, apical displacement. So here you give an incision and then instead of suturing it here where it originally was, we go apically and suture it. So this is an example of an apically displaced flap. Here, for example, sometimes we may have recession and we may want to cover it. So we elevate the flap, pull it down coronally and suture it. So this is the example of a coronally displaced flap. This is a clinical case demonstrating recession, exposure of flap, coronal repositioning and suturing, coverage of the recession. So coronally reposition is when you pull the flap down and you suture it. Other type of displacement that can be there is lateral displacement. So as you can appreciate here, there was some tissue, there is a recession over here and this flap we are going to take from the lateral, from the adjacent tooth, put it here, suture it. This also is most commonly done for coverage of recession. So this is a laterally displaced flap. When you don't displace a flap, you reflect it, put it back exactly where it was, it's called an undisplaced. So you can either have an undisplaced flap or a displaced flap. Now displaced can be coronally, apically or laterally. Based on the management of papilla. Now whenever we have teeth, so these small circles indicate your teeth. And this is what we do normally. We cut the papilla right in the middle. So we have half papilla on the buccal side and half papilla on the lingual side, as you can appreciate in this picture. The papilla has been cut in the middle. Whereas in papilla preservation flap, we take the entire papilla. We give the incision in such a way that the entire papilla is involved in either one of the flaps. So for example, few papillas here have been involved buccally and this papilla has been involved lingually. So that is what we mean by a papilla preservation flap. What happens is if we incise the papilla in the middle, it sort of causes post-healing, it causes formation of black triangles which we don't want. So in those cases, especially in aesthetic areas, we go in for a papilla preservation flap where the entire papilla is in one part of the flap and it is aesthetically quite superior. Now before we go on to individual flap procedures, let's just quickly talk about the incisions. So we have, when we classify incisions used in flap surgery, we have horizontal incisions that are given in this plane, horizontal plane, and vertical incisions, of course, given vertically. Now horizontal incisions, we have three main incisions. There is a separate lecture on incisions and the instruments used for giving incisions. You can go through that. I'll quickly rush through over here. So the first incision, as per its sequence, is called either the first incision, internal bevel, or reverse bevel incision. Why? We'll come back and see when the diagram is shown. The second incision is the crevicular incision, also known as second incision, or sulcular incision. Sulcular or crevicular because it is given inside the gingival sulcus. So that's why it is sulcular or crevicular. And the third incision is your interdental incision. We'll come to that. Let's go on to first incision. Now first incision, internal bevel incision or reverse bevel incision. Why is it called so? Before we go on to anything else, look at this diagram. When you're seeing this from the outside, you will not know that there is a 45-degree bevel over here. The bevel is inside and that is why the name sticks. Internal bevel incision. Now small things about this, it is given around 0.5 mm from the margin of the gingiva, 45 degrees, and goes towards the crest of the alveolar bone. So that is how your internal bevel incision goes. Basically it removes the pocket lining, conserves. It is a very conservative incision. You're just removing 0.5 to 1 mm of the gingiva, generally given using any of the blades, most commonly 15, 15C or even 11 number blade. The second incision, as I told you, the second incision because it is given second. The sulcular incision or crevicular incision because it is given inside the gingival sulcus. Now it is made from the base of the pocket to the crest of the bone. It creates a V-shaped wedge, I'll show you in the diagram, and separates the junctional epithelium and connective tissue fibers. Now this is given using the number 12 blade, and as you can see in the picture here, this is given inside the gingival sulcus. So this is the second incision given inside the gingival sulcus, and that is why it is also known as sulcular or crevicular incision. Now the third incision, this is the V-shaped wedge of the tissue that we were talking in the previous slide. So this part has been cut by the internal bevel, this part has been cut by crevicular, but there is still a small part which is still attached at the bottom. So to remove that, we give this third incision. It is not technically an incision, you are just trying to scoop out this small wedge of tissue that you have created, because this is the most infected part of the tissue, containing maximum number of granulation tissue, maximum number of bacteria. So if we remove this, everything is healthy and fine over there, and you can put the flap back and the body does the rest. So this is given using an Auburn's knife. So that's your third incision, interdental incision. Now vertical incisions, all of these incisions are given in the horizontal plane, whereas the vertical incision, as the name suggests, is given in the vertical plane. You can give it at one end, one side, or both sides of the flap. And if you don't give a vertical incision, the flap is known as an envelope flap, like an envelope. It just opens on one side. There is no way on the sideways. There is no vertical cut in an envelope. So envelope flap is the one where we use no vertical incisions. Just a quick tip, where to place the vertical incision. The golden rule of periodontal surgery, never cut a papilla. So here, as you can see here, we are cutting a papilla, so this is wrong. Right in the middle of the tooth, very high chances of post-op recession. So good place to give your vertical incision is on the line angles of the tooth, as you can appreciate here. So either it can be a mesial line angle or distal line angle, so that is a good place to give your vertical incision. When you are giving a vertical incision, make sure it's divergent. What do I mean by divergent? Always give it in a way, see from here I have to give a vertical incision at the line angle. So I can either go like this or like this. I should always go in a fashion where the base of the flap will be wider than the apex of the flap. That is because the blood supply comes from the base. So if the base is narrow, you have less blood supply, more chances of flap necrosis. So to avoid flap necrosis, always the base of the flap should be wider than the apex of the flap. So this is how you give your vertical incision in a divergent manner. Now let's come quickly to the flap surgeries. When you go through Carranza or any other standard textbooks that is being followed, all the procedures sound similar, and it's very confusing, and when they ask an exam for any flap, everybody just writes first, second, third incision. That is not how it goes. Even though we have 3 horizontal incisions, there is only one major flap procedure which uses all 3. Just because there are 3 incisions doesn't mean we have to use all 3, okay? So modified Widman flap is a flap which uses all 3 incisions, first, second, third, no vertical incision, first, second, third, all incisions are used for modified Widman flap. So as the name suggests, Widman gave a flap which was modified by somebody, and that's why it's called modified Widman flap. It was given by Ramford and Nissel in the year 1974. Now all flap procedures will begin in a sequence. You give LA, you give the incisions, you raise the flap, you do the debridement, you flush the area, close the flap. Now which incisions are given cause the flap to be a different procedure. For example, if you give all 3, it is modified Widman. If you give only second incision, that is only sulcular incision, even if you give only second incision, you can raise your flap. So if you give only second incision and open the flap, debride it, irrigate it, close it up, that's called a modified flap operation. We'll come back to that. Okay, so here, as you can appreciate in this diagram, 0.5 to 1 mm from the margin of the gingiva towards the crest of the bone. Even though it doesn't look like they have given a bevel, but it is actually given at a bevel of 45 degree. Which incision is this? First incision, internal bevel incision. The bevel will be inside, from outside you can't see it. Internal bevel incision. You give the first incision, you reflect the flap. After reflection, as you can see here, dotted line going inside the gingival sulcus. Which incision is that? Sulcular or crevicular or second incision. So first we give the first incision, then we give the second incision. Once that is done, you give the third incision and remove this. Can you see this dotted line here? Remove this triangular wedge of tissue. Here, this small thin lining, which is the most infected part of gingiva, is removed by the third incision, which is generally given using a Orban's knife. And then you close it, put it back, suture it up. So that's the essence of modified Widman flap. You give the first incision, flap reflection, second incision, third incision, debridement, close it up. So that's your modified Widman flap. So I have a clinical case where we have done modified Widman flap. As you can see here, pre-operative, first incision. Here they are using a number 11 blade to give the first incision. If you can appreciate, you can see a thin margin of gingiva which has been cut. So this is a good first incision. Okay, even palatally you can appreciate the first incision, which involves only 0.5 to 1 mm of the gingiva. Then you give the second incision, sulcular incision. If you can see here, the tip of the blade is going inside the gingival sulcus. Now this is not the same case. Just to show you what is a sulcular incision, I have put this. This is a number 12 blade, a curved blade, number 12, goes inside the sulcus easily, cuts the junctional epithelium as well as the supracrestal fibers. And then using your Orban's knife, come back to the same case. This is how your Orban's knife, and you just remove this part of the tissue. Flap reflection, the small tissue which is there is removed. Why? Because it is the most infected part of the gingiva. Deflect the flap, do your debridement, make sure everything is clean, there is no plaque, no calculus, and then you suture it up. So that's your modified Widman flap. Now let's come to one of the other flaps which is also commonly asked in exams, papilla preservation flap. As the name suggests, in this you are supposed to preserve the papilla. Should not cut the papilla in the middle, but preserve it in one of the flaps. It can be either buccal or lingual. So which flap is this? Is it a papilla preservation or a conventional flap? As you can see here, right in the middle, this is the buccal flap, this is the palatal flap or the lingual flap, and right in the middle they have cut the papilla. So of course this is a conventional flap. That's how you get these half papilla is here and the second half of the papilla is here, and then you put it back. So this is a conventional flap. Papilla preservation, as I told you, instead of cutting the papilla over here, you go here, give a semicircular incision, and then you reflect it. So when you reflect it, this entire papilla has come on the buccal side, and when you close it up, there will be much superior aesthetic results as well as very low chances of black triangle formulation using this papilla preservation flap. So mainly this papilla preservation is done in two situations. One, Either you want aesthetic, for example, anteriors, given that there is decent space to raise the papilla. If it is a very tight contact or there is not much space, you can't go in for a papilla preservation. Okay, so if there is aesthetic concerns. Second, if you have to do a regenerative surgery, for example, there is a bone defect here, you want to put some bone graft. So you don't want the suture to come right on top of it. So that's why you do a papilla preservation, come here and put your suture here away from the bone graft or your membrane, whatever you have put. So in cases of reconstructive surgery, wherever possible, we should go in for a papilla preservation. Now let's see the technique. You take your number 15, 15C or 11, anything works fine. Give your semicircular incisions wherever you want to include the papilla, and slowly you raise it onto the next side. So this looks something like this, and then you debride it, close it. So you can see here, instead of the suture coming here, the suture comes here where you have given the semicircular incision. So clinical picture showing, so here you can't really appreciate, but in the next picture, we can see that, yeah, this entire papilla has come out on this side rather than a pointed papilla in which half goes buccally, half goes lingually. Yeah, so this is how the palatal side looks once you cut the papilla. And then you put it back and you suture it up. So aesthetic results, very less chances of, so this triangle has already been there, but otherwise, no papillary recession, which is commonly seen with other types of flap surgeries. Okay, now there are two more things which I want to go into. One is internal bevel gingivectomy. Now internal bevel gingivectomy is also known as undisplaced flap. Okay, so before we move on to that, I will show you over here your internal bevel gingivectomy. Now anytime we say gingivectomy, that means we are cutting a large amount of gingiva. In conventional normal gingivectomy, we give an external bevel incision, which is the huge incision. It cuts a lot of gingiva, very unaesthetic, not done until and unless it is indicated in cases of, let's say, gingival enlargement. Even though textbook says there are a lot of indications for gingivectomy, but nowadays in this aesthetic driven dentistry era, nobody goes for gingivectomy just to treat a pocket. So we need to be as conservative as possible, leave as much as gingiva behind, which doesn't happen in gingivectomy. Now this is a procedure also known as undisplaced flap or internal bevel gingivectomy. Why? Because here the internal bevel incision is given in such a way that you cut a huge amount of gingiva. Let's see here. You go here, mark your pocket, and then rather than starting 0.5 to 1 mm, your internal bevel incision would ideally go like this. You mark the pocket and go beyond it, cutting a much larger part of gingiva. So that is your internal bevel gingivectomy, also known as undisplaced flap. Technically, it is not a gingivectomy, but it is known as internal bevel gingivectomy because one, you are giving the internal bevel incision, the bevel is inside. Gingivectomy because like gingivectomy, you are cutting a huge amount of tissue. So this is not advised, not routinely done, only for very specific indications it is done. Yeah, so here I wanted to show you the different types of incisions. So this one marked right here, 0.5 to 1 mm from the gingival margin is your internal bevel incision, that's right. Okay, if we take this pocket marking here and then we go like this, cutting a much larger part of gingiva, this is your internal bevel gingivectomy. If we go here inside the gingival sulcus, which incision is that? Sulcular incision, that's right, second incision. First is internal bevel, second is crevicular, third is interdental. Yes, even though they say 1, 2, 3, not necessary that we have to do all the incisions in all the flap surgery. Okay, so that is your incisions. Again, if we mark the pocket here and then we cut the gingiva like this, that is your external bevel incision, because as you can appreciate here, the bevel will be seen outside. When you look at the gingiva, you can appreciate that there is a bevel over there, external bevel incision, which is used in gingivectomy. Okay, so yeah, this is your apically displaced flap. Now in apically displaced flap, again they have asked many times, that's the only reason I have put this slide here. Apically displaced flap, as the name suggests, you raise the flap, you give your first, second incision, raise the flap, send it down. This arrow over here represents that it has been apically displaced and suture it up. So that is your apically displaced flap. Why is it done? Why would you intentionally want to expose this root surface? Because it is one of the very few procedures with which you can increase the width of the attached gingiva. All this pocket lining over here will become attached gingiva. We put it down, put it near the bone, it gets attached to the bone, and that is how it becomes the attached gingiva. So when we do apically displaced flap, we are increasing the width of attached gingiva, and that is one of its indications. In cases wherever there is less attached gingiva, to increase it, we can go in for a apically displaced flap. Okay. Now coming to sutures. Just quickly, coming to sutures. Now quickly I'll just tell you in exam how to identify the suture. Now they give like 3-4 images and everything looks the same. So today I'll be covering 4 or 5 major types of sutures, and once you understand those basics, how to identify a suture, then you can identify definitely any other variation that they give. So the major types according to me would be a interrupted suture, which will be a regular interrupted or a direct loop suture or figure of 8. Then you have your mattress sutures, in which you can have horizontal mattress or vertical mattress. Then you have your sling suture, continuous suture, and anchor. We'll come to that. Now direct or loop suture, it's a very simple. You go in from one side, come out from the other side, tie the knot. That's your direct loop suture. It is a type of interrupted suture. Every suture has its own knot. Figure of 8, slight modification from the direct loop suture. Again, it is a independent suture. It is a interrupted suture. You go in from one side. Instead of, properly coming out, you go from the other side and make a, it's like your infinity symbol. Okay. So you enter, you go here, you come up and you come down. So that's how your 8 forms. In the further slide, I'll explain it further how to identify your figure of 8 suture. If you see here in the second image, okay, you have entered the tissue from this side, and then rather than going from the inside, you went out and again pierced it from the outside. So that's how your 8 is forming. So this is your figure of 8 suture. We'll come back to that. Mattress suture. Now anytime they say mattress, your brain should think double piercing. Mattress means double piercing. You will have 2 entry points. So if you see here, horizontal mattress means if this is the tooth, you pierce here and here buccally as well as here and here lingually. So horizontal mattress. So here you can see there's a piercing over here. Then they go here, go to the other side, and 2. So there will be 4 points for a single suture. This is your horizontal mattress suture. Now what happens in vertical? This is the tooth. In horizontal, you give 1 piercing here, 1 piercing here. In vertical, you give 1 piercing coronally and 1 piercing apically. If you can appreciate over here, once the suture is done, there are 2 points. Very small, but 2 points of entry on one side, which are coronal and apical rather than mesial and distal. Here you see, it's mesial and distal. Here it's apical and coronal. So in the next diagram, I'll explain it to you. Now this is the last suture, sling suture. When we were small, we have all played slingshots, right? Sling. Like a sling, it has 2 points of entry and the other side is totally free. So if you appreciate the picture over here, you pierce, you go around the tooth, come back, pierce again and close it up. I'll explain it to you in the next slide. Okay. So here, let's come. Okay. So your interrupted suture, you go like this and just knot it up. This is your normal interrupted suture. What happens in figure of 8? This is 1 point of entry. You go, then go out, again pierce it, come back and then tie a knot. So from outside when you're seeing it may look similar, but in a continuous or a direct loop suture, you go inside, come out from the other side and knot. Whereas here you go inside, go out, again go inside from the outer side, come out and knot. So that is how your figure of 8 suture works. Now if you remember my description from the previous slide, this is how your horizontal mattress will look and this is how your vertical mattress will look. This is your buccal flap, lingual flap. So you start from here, go here, come out, pierce again, go here and then come back and tie a knot. So this is your horizontal mattress. On a single tooth, you will have 2 piercings on each side, mesial and distal. That is your horizontal. So if you look from outside, it will look like 2 lines, one here and one here. So this is your horizontal mattress suture. Whereas when you go to vertical mattress, you pierce here, then go this side, pierce here, then come out, pierce here, go around the tooth, pierce here and tie the knot here. So this is your vertical mattress. But when you're looking from outside, it will just look like one line over here and one line over here. So that is your vertical mattress suture. Around the tooth, it will look like, the suture will look like this, like a small line with a coronal entry point, apical entry point on both the sides, whereas your horizontal mattress looks like this. Whenever there is a mattress, it means buccally as well as lingually there are 2 entry points. If they are horizontal like this, mesial and distal, it's your horizontal mattress. If they are vertical, apical and coronal, they are vertical mattress sutures. So with this, I think we have come to the end of today's lecture. I hope that you know just the incisions I have covered in a separate lecture. But the first incision, second incision, third incision, why do we do flap? Just for access. It's not a magical procedure. We just need to reach there. Our conventional instruments like, you know, curettes or for that matter scalers don't reach deep inside more than 6 mm pocket. So that's when we do flap surgery. We open it up, we clean it and we close it. If you're using all 3 incisions, first, second, third, internal bevel, crevicular, interdental, that's your modified Widman. Then you have different types. You have papilla preservation flap. You have internal bevel gingivectomy, which is lot of gingiva cut using internal bevel incision. Then you have your apically modified, apically displaced flap, which is the only one used to increase the width of attached gingiva and identification of these sutures. So I hope you all would have learned some things and may be able to solve the questions related to this topic better. Thank you and have a good day.